Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time out of the day to join us for our webinar. We are excited to get going, but before we jump in, I'm going to quickly show everyone where you can learn a little bit more about US bulletproofing on Acelab. All right, so yeah, it looks like everybody's trickling in. So, all right, you should be able to see my screen in just a moment. We've got Acelab's page pulled up here. So anytime you join Acelab, you'll see the search bar at the top of your page. You can search for any specific manufacturer here. Just make sure you're toggled over to the manufacturers tab right here, and that's where you'll find all the options. So here we are on their page. We've got some basic information here. You can request more information by clicking this button. We've got a few highlights for you, video, as well as their products for you to explore. So if you want to click into any of these specific ones to learn a little bit more about them, you can do that here. You can also save it to your firm library right here as well. That way you have it in your folder for future reference. Yeah, definitely check out their page when you get the chance. We've got a lot of great materials over here for you. I will drop the link to their page in the webinar chat for you to reference. Couple other things to make note of before we start. We will be doing Q&A towards the end. So if you have any questions throughout the presentation at any time, you can drop that in the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. So feel free to drop those in there and we'll read them out loud and get to as many as we can towards the end. We will also do a webinar poll. So you'll see that pop up during the webinar. If you're interested in getting more information from Brian and Wade, afterwards, you can fill that out and we'll get you two connected after the webinar. We will also have a post-webinar survey, so definitely encourage you to participate in all of those. Lastly, today is an AIA-approved presentation, so we collected your AIA numbers upon registration, so you should already be set there. If you're concerned that we didn't get your AIA number, I'm going to drop a form in the chat as well, so you can fill that out to make sure that you get credit for today. But that is everything on my end. So I will go ahead and pass it over to you, Wade.
Great. Thank you so much. I certainly do appreciate that, Kayla. And good. I'm assuming everybody, let me share my screen here in this presentation. Everybody can see my screen there?
It's coming up. Yep, there we go. I can see it.
Okay, fantastic. Well, looking forward to actually working with everybody, hopefully in the future. But thank you very, very much for attending today and in protecting people and property. She mentioned my name is Wade Arnold with a company called Specialty Fenestration Group, comprised of two different manufacturers. And some of y'all may have heard of Quick Serve before and or US Bulletproofing. If you have not, that's certainly quite all right. We'd love to work with you in the future on many of your projects. But if you were here to talk today, essentially where you were needing security with regard to ballistic, blast, storm impact, or forced entry rated solutions with regard to your fenestration systems, well, then you've certainly come to the right place. And I will ask everybody during this presentation two different things. One, I want you to think like a criminal, so you design with security in mind, truly, because people are becoming more methodical, more tactical, more cerebral in how they enter occupied spaces, whether that be a government building, a gas station, an educational facility, essentially even home ownership or residential homes. People are typically becoming more tactical in how they approach these occupied secure spaces, all right? The second thing that I want to make sure that you understand today and are certainly thinking is essentially when or where security may be needed. And those certainly do go hand in hand, those two different points there, because if you're not thinking like a criminal and you're just trying to harden the facility from rioters or looters or storm impact scenarios, think about the exterior and the interior aspect as well of when or where you may need security on your building. And just by looking at this image here, I'm sure many of y'all recognize it. If you're in the DC area, if you've ever been to Washington, D.C., well, then you will certainly recognize and understand that this is the Washington Monument located right there in the central hub of the National Mall. Now, focus your attention there on the entry vestibule. And just by looking at all of the glass and metal, could anybody tell me just by looking at it if it's ballistic rated, blast, storm impact, or forced entry rated by any means whatsoever? If you look at it in and out of the doors or windows that you're looking out of every single day on your home or your office building or some of the retail facilities you're walking out of, are you assuming that they're ballistic rated or blast or storm impact or forced entry? And just by looking at it, no, you can't tell me. There's no label on it. There's no sticker saying this is level 5 ballistic rated, this is blast rated. Good luck getting in. So essentially, I want you to make sure that you understand that this all starts with your specifications, design details, plans to ensure that you have security in and around your buildings, because essentially it doesn't matter how much perimeter fencing, bollards, security access control, cameras, security guards are in or around your building. If you are not hardening the physical exterior, or in some cases, the interior aspects of your building, then you are certainly running the risk of people entering those occupied spaces, or overall just compromising the security of your buildings. Because the smart criminals, yes, they're going to check to see if the doors are unlocked first, whether that be on the front of the building or the back doors, where people are certainly not allowed all the time or to gain access. But again, like I mentioned, I want you to be thinking like a criminal, so you design with security in mind. And looking at all the statistics just over the past few years, everybody is seeing, again, all the constant civil unrest, all the anti-Semitism going on today. Anytime you turn on the news, what are the first three things always on the news? Drunk driving accidents, shootings, and the winning lottery numbers we didn't win. Quite frankly, it's just depressing to watch anymore. But then you look at the billions of dollars of damages that are done in just civil unrest and rioting and looting and all the storm impact scenarios, whether it be hurricanes, tornadic conditions, or windborne debris. Those are all of these different types of security threats are constantly plaguing the world every single day. So it's not a matter of if, it's more a matter of when or where these different types of threats are going to be hitting the exterior of these buildings, that you want to ensure that you are protecting and hardening the physical aspect of the building envelope. So the four key security categories that we're going to discuss before we get into the materials and the solutions are ballistic, blast, storm impact, and forced entry. And the first one everybody always likes to talk about right off the bat are ballistic rated standards. Now, you will not hear me utilize the term bulletproof because it is a misnomer. Yes, I know my company is called US Bulletproofing, but essentially I want you to understand that these systems are bullet resistant, or a better term that you can utilize are ballistic rated, because essentially what you are doing with ballistic rated solutions, you are buying time. No system is truly bulletproof out there, because given enough time, if you were to shoot a projectile at a single pane of glass in the same point, eventually one may pass through there. But obviously you're on your computers right now, and I highly encourage you, feel free to go to our websites, feel free to go to your favorite search engine and type in UL752 and click images, and one of these charts is going to pop up. And I highly encourage you, and feel free, you're more than welcome to this presentation at the very end of this, no proprietary material, but I want you to save this chart because you will utilize this for future reference as well. UL752 is the ballistic rated standard out there for about 99% of your construction projects. The other 1% we'll talk about here in a little while, but some brief overview and some cliff notes here, and then also some loopholes and some issues that I want to point out about UL752, just to make sure you are all familiar with it, all very aware, because if I did not have these images on there and just showed you a chart with numbers, well, it's essentially what I call the Dr. Seuss effect. More pictures, less words, people will essentially pay attention. But the brief overview is essentially levels 1 through 3 primarily focus on small caliber handguns. 4 through 8 focus on your higher caliber rounds, your single shot rifles, semi-automatic weapons, all right? The first issue that I have with UL 752 is essentially that this is not what they consider a real world test. And on the caveat, unfortunately, it's kind of a catch-22. There is no true real world test or real world application to help protect against ballistic rated standards, because this is all done within a controlled environment. And that brings my second point I want to point out about UL 752. They mandate that you mark off 15 feet before you discharge any weapon with any projectile at any surface of any material. This is not just pertaining to glass. So essentially, if your clients ever ask you, is there any testing between 0 to 15 feet? Unfortunately, the answer is no. And the reason they move you back 15 feet before you test these types of windows or doors is essentially that allows the projectile to achieve its maximum velocity before it hits the surface of the materials as well, all right? The final issue that I have with the UL 752, if there is one level you should never, ever specify or utilize, please let it be level 6. And this is the reason why. Common sense is going to teach you that level 6 is more protective than 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, right? Essentially, it's higher in the chart. It's what we were taught in grade school. 6 is greater than all those other numbers. And unfortunately, it's not. And if you look closely enough, essentially 6 is the same protection as level 1. The main difference is the fact that level 6 is shot 5 times, level 1 is shot 3 times. That's essentially, again, we are buying time because there are multiple different types of materials, multiple different types of solutions, but they're all tested to the same UL 752 standard. There will be many times that you will get the question from your clients, what level do you recommend? And fortunately, you do not want to answer that question by any means whatsoever. Instead, answer their question with a question and say, what are you trying to protect against? Because when it comes to dictating what level of protection, it really comes down to what you are trying to protect against in a situational aspect. Believe it or not, a lot of drive-through windows that you go buying out of every single day that are manufactured by our company, sometimes those are ballistic rated solutions to where you pick up your Chick-fil-A, your Burger King, your Wendy's, your McDonald's. In some cases, in some areas, those can very well be ballistic rated drive-through windows. You look at gas stations, retail facilities, credit unions, financial institutions, recreational centers, ticket windows, transaction areas will typically utilize levels 1, 2, or 3. When you start getting into some of the higher levels, like 4, 5, 7, and 8, you will see those used at government facilities. But believe it or not, a lot of utility stations, people still pay their water bills and their electricity bills by check or in person with cash as well. And if you shut one of those two items from people, turn one of those two items off from people not paying their bills, well, you get some pretty upset and irate people that will show up to the facilities demanding that you turn back on their power, turn back on their water, right? Police stations, those are constantly targeted facilities of people just doing drive-by shootings out there, right? Outside of the buildings. You look at educational facilities and just the ongoing plague and the terror and threats of active shooters for educational facilities across the country as well. So yes, as we look going into some of the higher levels as well, this is typically what we designate as what we call our HVT, or your high value target areas, or your HSD, high security designated areas. And I want everybody, now that you're in your criminal mindset, taking a look at this image right here. Two things. One, take a guess at what level of ballistic protection that may actually be. Again, like I said earlier, no one's truly going to be able to tell me because there's no label or stickler on it saying this is level 8, good luck getting in. And what type of building do you think that may actually be? All right. I've had some people say, well, that's an office building. That's a mixed use development. It's probably in the coastal region because they can see the palm trees out back. People say doctor's offices. Some have said financial institutions. But I want you to remember that image right there because I'm going to show you that towards the very, very end of the presentation, and you will be amazed where that actual building actually is and what it truly, the security rating has been designated for just that entry vestibule right there. The other 1% of the projects out there across the country that I want everybody to be aware of, at least this additional standard, is the NIJ, or the National Institute of Justice Standard 0801.01. This is essentially typically designated for federal entities, Department of Justice, Department of State, Department of Energy in some cases as well, and the DoD. So there are some similarities and some synergies to UL 752. They can even have windows and doors that are tested in conjunction with this standard as well. As you can see just on the chart there, they're 9mm, 357, 44 magnums, 7.62 NATO rounds, and 308 rifle rounds as well, just like we had in the UL 752 standards. But they mandate and require that all different types of specimens or materials are hit 5 times instead of just 1 or 3. So this is essentially, again, very highly regulated and highly specialized type of standard, but that's typically designated for federal entities or federal buildings. So moving on from ballistic rated standards, moving into blast protection. When people think of bomb blast scenarios, they are always thinking about terroristic acts, international terroristic acts overseas, but that's not always the case. Sometimes these bomb blast scenarios can be accidental explosions as well. I'm sure many of y'all remember the Oklahoma City bombing that terrorized the community up in Oklahoma a few decades ago. But essentially, that explosion, when that explosion occurred, every single piece of glass within a 2-mile radius was either shattered, fractured, or blown inwards. into the actual building. And then some of y'all may remember a few years ago in a small town in Texas called West, there was a fertilizer plant that exploded in the middle of the night. Unfortunately, that happened in the middle of the night because essentially what happened there, a fire broke out at the fertilizer plant and two chemicals, a fire door didn't activate and shut, and two chemicals that weren't supposed to mix together actually did and combusted. And across the street was a middle school. Now, people would think, why would you build a school across the street from a refinery or a fertilizer plant? Well, essentially, it's a small town, and everybody in that town worked at that factory, and it was for convenience for parents, for pick up their kids and drop them off at school without being late to work. So when you look at these blast rated standards, you also want to think about what you may be in next to proximity of what that facility or refinery or storage facility may actually be. Many of y'all probably remember in the height of the pandemic, the port of Beirut in Lebanon there. Same thing. Chemicals that mixed together, a fire broke out at a storage facility, and thousands of lives were lost, and billions of dollars of damages in that city were accumulated purely because of an accidental explosion. There are many different calculations and many different standards with regard, or sorry, many different calculations and requirements when it comes to blast rated standards. But there are two things that are required in on every single project and in every single set of specifications when you are working on a blast rated project. The first actually is the fact that it is required the standoff distance. The standoff distance is essentially what that distance is from the surface of those buildings from the initial explosion, right? That very well could be 2 feet up to 200 yards away or miles away. It all just depends on the catastrophic amount of what the actual explosive power from that explosion may be. The second thing that is required in your specifications is essentially what we call the peak pressure or the impulse, the massive amount of pressure that is exerted on the surface of that building. And I'm going to give you guys a great diagram of what that actually shows of the standoff distance and the peak pressure here in the next slide or so. But when it comes to blast rated standards, and please don't cheat, please don't think that this chart right here is much like UL 752 where it's different blast levels. No, these are essentially what we call performance conditions, the performance condition of the overall building envelope and how you want it to perform. Most people would typically say, I want performance condition 1. I want 0 breakage on the exterior of my building. And that's not always the best case because what happens when we make something too structurally sound or we over-engineer something? Well, essentially, it's the same way we design bridges and buildings to move and flex, right? If you make something too structurally sound and there's a breakage in the actual building of the bridge, well, you run the risk of complete catastrophic failure of that actual system. So most of the time, people will design to performance condition 2, 3A, or in some cases, 3B, because that just allows some of the glass fragments or some of the dusting to actually enter that occupied space. But it all just, again, depends on what your threat for blast protection may actually be. So on this image here, as you can see, the standoff distance is essentially what we talked about from the initial explosion to the surface of the building, because I remind everybody, your buildings are living, breathing organisms. They move, they shift, they crack, they settle in their foundation, they expand in some cases. Anytime you open a door and walk into another room, you hear the ceiling tiles lift. Well, the pressure inside that room is changing. It's the same concept applied, but from an external standpoint. So yes, you will be required to have standoff distance and the peak pressure included in your specifications and design details, because at that point, it all comes down to the anchoring to the substructure and the steel framing that is inside the actual buildings as well. All right. Now, these two videos I'm going to show you here are very slow motion videos of explosions occurring that are testing curtain wall and storefront systems on the exterior skins of these buildings. The first that you're going to see, and right here, if you can see my little mouse circling around that device, that's about 10 pounds of TNT. All right. You are going to see the hemispherical shockwave explode on both of these images, and these curtain walls in these systems and all the glass must maintain their structural integrity and not enter the occupied space. Otherwise, it runs the risk of complete catastrophic failure. The second video that you will also see will be what we call the positive pressure or the negative pressure. And negative pressure can be just as detrimental to a building because they can actually suck the doors and the windows right off the actual building. And at that point, people have gained access to the insides of these buildings. So the first shock wave that you will see here There's the positive praise hitting the building. And watch here, you'll see it go in reverse. It almost looks like the building's going to rewind. And there's the negative pressure that is essentially exerting a force onto the surface of that building as well. So again, just some slow motion videos just to show you that there are systems that are designed to withstand all of these different types of bomb blast explosions, whether they are intentional acts of terrorism or they are accidental explosions occurring wherever these actually you may be in the proximity of as well. Now, I'm sure many of y'all may recognize this actual skyline right here, but this is essentially, if you're anywhere in Nashville, Tennessee, you probably recognize that there's the Batman building that gave it away. But some of y'all may remember here what happened in 2020 on Christmas Day. And for those that may be living in the area, remember it in the news, there was a crazy individual that was driving in a mobile home and driving around on a loudspeaker yelling, get away, explosion is about to occur. And essentially what he did, he decided to detonate this near the AT&T building, but essentially that is 3 to 4 blocks away from Broadway Avenue, which is one of the busiest streets in America, 365 days a year. But thank goodness he did this on Christmas morning because there was no loss of life other than just himself that decided to exert it, insert himself into that mobile home with the explosive devices as well. But what do you notice essentially about every single building? All the windows and doors have blown inwards into the building. I'm not saying you have to go build every single building out of blast rated material, but essentially you also want to think about what you may be in the proximity or the area of next to, like refineries, like federal buildings, like we talked about the Oklahoma City bombing, educational facilities near refineries. Believe it or not, at airports sometimes, some of those windows that you are looking out of, waiting at your terminal for your plane that's delayed or not there yet, sometimes those are blast rated windows and doors because there's a lot of things at airports that go boom or have the opportunity, the possibility too. So moving on from blast rated standards onto storm impact, because right now FEMA and ICC 500 are essentially the two words on every architect's radar out there if you were building a building that needs protection with storm impact solutions, whether they be tornadic conditions, hurricane, or windborne debris. I live in Houston, Texas, and I don't know about y'all, but sometimes in Texas, the ball size of the hail gets as large as grapefruit sometimes as well. Think about those hitting the sides of your buildings or your cars or your roofs. We want to make sure that we are protecting against all of these different types of scenarios that we may not be able to predict when or where they may be coming from. Yes, we can certainly see hurricanes through satellites and when those might be coming. We have early detection devices for tornadoes as well. Windborne debris, you can look at all these different types of storm cells. But again, like I said, if you are not hardening the physical aspect of your building, you do run the risk of these solutions failing out there if you're not protecting from all these different types of threats. And essentially what these are, they are the same type of glass. They're the same type of metal. They're the same system. So if anything, you're getting this multifunctional window and fenestration system to protect you against all of these different types of threats. Now, I would like to talk briefly about window film and some of the unfortunate marketing that has gone along with window film, because I will say this about film. Film has its place in the world for decorative, privacy, bird-friendly, animal-friendly application, and essentially privacy as well, but not when it comes to security. Many window film manufacturers out there have marketed the material to be ballistic rated, blast rated, and storm impact rated. Unfortunately, it is not. So please, please do not fall for that marketing scam. Also, on top of that, with window film, if you were to install surface applied window film on a standard IGU, whether that is on day one of the project or the entire life cycle of the building, it voids the warranty immediately. All right. Window film already exists, and I'll show you all some great examples here in the actual materials section as well. Window film already exists in the inner layers of the glass. And unfortunately, the International Window Film Association made a statement a few years ago stating that film is not ballistic rated unless it is applied to ballistic rated glass. What's the purpose of putting window film on an IGU if it's just going to allow bullets to penetrate through to the other side? So again, just some things to think about that I want everybody to be aware of when it comes to installing window film. Please, please do not utilize it for security rated purposes. You have multiple different types of applications for it and it absolutely has its place in the world, but please ensure that it is on the inner layers of the laminated glass and not just surface applied window film, because at some point, I truly do believe that FEMA will supersede Miami-Dade County, Florida Building Code, Texas Department of Insurance, essentially because FEMA is testing to higher wind speeds, 250 miles an hour, which is an F5 tornado, versus 155 miles per hour, which is a Category 5 hurricane. At that point, some people may still be asking themselves, what are you doing in the state versus trying to ride out the storm? Because if you look at them in these areas that are very prone to these different types of scenarios or different types of natural disasters, well, I truly do also do believe that the term tornado alley should really be tornado half the country, because we have seen multiple different tornadoes touch down just in the past decade, not just in the Midwest or the lower Southeast as well. Just last year in Houston, Texas, where I live, 2 tornadoes touched down. So now apparently we get tornadoes on top of hurricanes as well, and hail storms and ice storms in Houston, Texas. Who would have ever thought there? But there are areas, even in Pennsylvania, the upper Midwest, and the mountain ranges where they do experience tornadoes and tornadic conditions versus just hurricanes that may be just prone to what they experience in the coastal regions as well. So I just want to ensure that everybody understands that all of these different types of windows and doors help protect against all of these different types of threats, including the next one we're going to be discussing as well, forced entry. Now, forced entry is essentially, there are 3 requirements when you do forced entry rated testing, but they vary depending on what the actual standard may be. All right. So essentially ASTM F1233, 588, and then the Department of State most up-to-date testing for 5 and 15-minute ratings. There are 3 things that remain pretty uniform across all these different types of standards. And one is the number of people that are testing these. 2, the types of tools that are being utilized to test these. And then 3, the duration, how long people are allowed to hit and bang on these windows and doors and try to break through to the other side. To give you an idea, ASTM F1233 may range anywhere between 1 to 5 minutes of testing on these windows and doors. They may use hammers, they may use screwdrivers, they may use blunt objects, they may try to throw a brick at the window or the door as well, just to try to break the glass. And then essentially they only give 1 person to test that window or door. Then you go to Department of State 5 and 15-minute ratings, and what they do is they give essentially 6 very large individuals, different heights, different builds, different ethnicities. They give them hammers, axes, they shoot it a couple of times, crowbars. They're essentially trying to break through to the other side of these actual buildings to ensure to see if they can try to break through the other side. So imagine trying to break through here in 15 minutes versus 1 minute, but it all comes down to when or where these buildings may be incurring these different types of threats. So even if you look at fenestration systems such as these as well, it happened to be an intercity transit center just south of Seattle, Washington, to where essentially where people were just showing up to work here to check in to drive the local public transportation, the buses, their vehicles of any sort, or just some of the cleaning crews as well that go around the city. All they're doing is reporting to work here on these days. They're not keeping cash here. There are no high value targets, high security designated areas, but people were driving by these windows, shooting out the windows for target practice. So essentially what they did, they decided the entire exterior envelope, they decided to make it level 5 ballistic rated storefront and doors. That way they can at least protect if crazy individuals try to come up and break into this building, or if they're just driving by trying to shoot out the buildings for target practice. So like I said earlier, the 2 things that I want everybody to be thinking about is think like a criminal. So you design with security in mind, but I also want you to think about when or where you may actually need security, because you will truly be amazed at sometimes the stories your clients may actually share with you and why they're looking at security fenestration systems. So how does security glazing actually work? Well, essentially, it works very much like your ABS or your anti-lock brake systems. And for anybody that's been driving in a rainstorm or a snowstorm out there, or just speeding sometimes, and you slammed on your brakes and you felt your ABS kick in, that jolting motion, yes, in some cases, I know it feels like you're speeding up or losing control, but essentially what that's doing, it's dissipating your energy. It's dissipating your forward motion or energy dispersion. So if I were to shoot a projectile at a single pane of glass or even an IGU, yes, it's meeting another force and it's slowing down, but it's not slowing down enough to come to a complete stop. That's why we utilize a laminated system, all right? Because it's going to hit that first layer, slow down, second layer, slow down even more, third layer, come to a complete stop. So when you look at the different types of security glazing, essentially there are two different types. There's acrylic products and there's glass products. There's multiple makeups of each. Essentially, the first one we typically come across is what we call a monolithic or a polycast sheet of acrylic. Now, it will offer you very low levels of ballistic protection, typically only levels 1, 2, and 2, and it will also offer you some low levels of forced entry protection. For entry vestibules, you can polish the edges. There will always be pros and cons to glass versus acrylic. When you start getting into 3-ply and 4-ply polycarbonate solutions, well, you get an additional layer of ballistic protection. You also get some more forced entry protection, but you still have not achieved blast protection, your higher levels of ballistics, and the storm impact protection that you may be looking at, and depending on when or where you're building, may actually be incurring some of these different types of security threats. So one of the main reasons I always tell everybody to utilize glass on exterior surfaces, even with or without security, is essentially building longevity. Glass is one of the most durable products out there that can withstand all of the environmental elements, but when you're going to need security incorporated in that building as well, there are two different makeups. You can look at all glass solutions, which give you all of the levels of ballistic protection, some storm impact requirements as well, and then also high levels of forced entry. But if you're needing all of those security categories met, where you have the highest level of ballistic protection, bomb blast protection, experiencing storm impact solutions as well, and high levels of forced entry, well, you're going to utilize a glass-clad polycarbonate, essentially what we call a GCP. This will meet all the different types of security categories that we've also discussed as well. But like I've said, there are pros and cons to both utilizing acrylic versus glass. Personally, I certainly do appreciate people utilizing more of the glass solutions on the interior applications. You can certainly utilize acrylic because you can polish the edges. Here's a clear line of sight, allows for daylighting or borrowed light solutions to be able to enter those occupied spaces as well. You can also incorporate RF or radio frequency or IR infrared shielding as well into the actual fenestration solutions. When you look at when or where you may need radio frequency or infrared protection, believe it or not, those slanted windows you typically see at the airport on the air traffic control tower, those are sometimes radio frequency protected windows because they want to keep people from diverting planes or hearing where certain commercial airliners may be transporting and growing across the country as well. You think about C-suites or corporate suite offices for CEOs' offices or executives, SCIF rooms. You look at data centers. Sometimes we want to try to keep people from stealing information, data, and listening in on trade secrets as well. So like I mentioned earlier, sometimes it's not people that are trying to get in with bullets or rocks or bricks or rioting and looting. Sometimes your enemies or people are just on the outside of these buildings just trying to listen in sometimes as well. So you will be amazed at when or where you will need these different types of security protection as well. One of the main reasons we utilize aluminum for storefront is purely just to protect against non-corrosive activity and decomposition as well. It's very lightweight, it's easy to utilize, and it just makes for a more clean, inviting appeal for some of the storefronts and the applications as well. But you do have the ability to incorporate steel and wood ballistic and blast rated solutions from the interior aspect and some of the exterior aspect of your buildings as well. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind, but how we actually protect the framing, because if people are shooting at the glass and realizing that they're not getting in, the next place that they might start attacking, whether it's bullets or fenestration solution that might experience crowbars or axes or people trying to break through these fenestration systems, well, that might be the framing or the metallic members. And essentially how we protect these, you will do one of two things. You will either utilize a thicker gauge aluminum or you will insert steel into the actual frames. I hate to say this, but hollow metal frames are not ballistic rated. Your standard anodized aluminum or hollow metal frame you walking out of every single day will not meet the higher levels of ballistic protection. It will not meet storm impact requirements. It will not meet blast requirements, or in some cases, some of the higher levels of forced entry requirements as well. So just know that there are aluminum solutions out there that still give all the appeal and all the design creativity that you want for exterior envelopes while still offering security and thermal properties as well, which brings me to my next point, thermal performance of buildings, because the main threat that hits buildings every single day, every day, is sunlight and environmental factors. And if you are not protecting at least against those, well, then you're truly not doing a due diligence for your building envelope and the overall building performance or the occupancy requirements on the insides of those buildings as well. But you have the ability to custom create, custom design, and incorporate thermal resistance into the exterior fenestration solutions as well with struts, thermal breaks, isolator materials. You can get thermally broken or thermally insulated, ballistic rated and blast rated glass clad polycarbonate glass as well that incorporates solar control or in some cases animal friendly applications as well. So if anything, you have created now at this point this multifunctional fenestration solution and openings for the exterior envelopes or in some cases the interior aspects as well. I'm not going to focus too much on hardware just because I want everybody to understand mostly the fact that you have the ability to custom create, custom design. I know every maintenance individual out there, I know every building owner wants one set of keys, all right? But when it comes to high security, in some cases, you will have to use access control. You have to utilize electrified hardware. You will have to use certain types of panic devices, levers, locks, multi-point locks as well. I just want you to understand that, know that you have the ability to custom create and custom design to incorporate all the different types of access and control, even into the doors and the hardware as well. When it comes to specification writing, and whether or not you're a specification writer, you're a designer, you're an intern, you're an architect, you're a building owner, even you're an installer, a general contractor, everybody here is either guilty of or has fallen victim to spec copying and pasting. All right. I know it's very easy to generate a project manual just by selecting materials and dragging and dropping it into it, but I want to err on the side of caution when it comes to spec copying and pasting and spec writing with regard to security rated materials. And I'm going to give you guys a great example. All right. Let's say you're designing a beautiful elementary school or a beautiful middle school, whichever type of educational facility you want to look at, and is in whatever town you may live in. Pick the nicest neighborhood. Pick the safest, nicest neighborhood that everybody aspires and wants to live in. You design that beautiful school in that neighborhood or that school district, and their minimum standards are level 1 ballistic rated protection. You design that school is delivered on time, under budget, no punch list items. They write magazine articles about it. You win national awards because that always happens. All right. Let's say you take that same footprint and you put that in a less desirable part of the city where no one wants to live and no one wants to work or no one wants to go to school, and their minimum standards are level 3, and you forget to change that one number all because you took that same project manual and spec copied and pasted, well, that's a potential lawsuit waiting to happen. Keep in mind, your design details, your plans, your specifications are all contract documents. They can be held up in the court of law. So please, I always err on the side of caution with regard to security rated material. Please, please do not spec copy and paste. Instead, contact manufacturers, contact myself, contact my colleagues. We will be happy to help you write specifications. Now, the majority of the rest is just project gallery and case study. But what I want you to understand just by looking at these images, two different things. One, the level of creativity, right? And then two, I also want you to understand that these are still regular storefronts and curtain wall systems and openings and security transaction windows and doors. But just by looking at them, you still can't tell me if they're security rated or not. That's why it all starts with your design details and your specifications, because just by looking at these two pairs of doors here, this is the police station located in New Jersey with level 5 ballistic rated solutions, but it still has your standard 2.5-inch faceplate, still has your standard stile and rail doors, still has your standard push-pull handlebars as well, hung on continuous hinges for those doors. So if anything, again, you're still achieving everything that you want into the overall building performance in the envelope while still offering security into the fenestration systems from an exterior standpoint. Moving to the interior, you also have the ability to custom create and custom design, because at this point, you've done two different things here, right? Essentially, one, you have created a safe, occupied space on the secure side of these windows and doors for the staff, for the education, for the in-office administrators as well. At the same time, you have also created a psychological deterrent for anybody that's just walking in there and trying to break into this occupied space or the schools or the buildings, office buildings, whatever they're trying to do, and they're not able to gain access. Well, they're going to think I'm going to have better luck robbing the liquor store down the street. Well, my plans have been foiled. I'm going to leave the building. This didn't work out. More than likely, someone's hit the panic button or called the police or notified the authorities. So that's essentially what you've achieved just by looking at this image here as well. And with educational facilities, sometimes it's not always active shooters. Sometimes it's unruly parents. And I'll be honest, you get a little unruly at a PTA meeting, they might label you as a domestic terrorist these days. But for that matter, think about civil court cases, all right? Or divorced parents, restraining orders. The days of you walking into your student's classroom, if they've forgotten something in your car, or you just wanted to embarrass them, those days are long over. Essentially, we need to be building educational facilities, not as lockdown facilities, because we still want to inspire creativity. So we still want it to make sure that it's a safe space and a safe learning in space for these students and these staff to go to every single day. And you can achieve that by incorporating security fenestration systems into the actual building, whether or not it's just the vestibule, the back door, the front door, or all the windows on the first floor. You have the ability to custom create and custom design and incorporate those into the overall building solution. And I love showing this next image here, but I'm sure many of y'all have seen these types of windows out there, whether it be for the pharmacies or the financial institutions. I've seen them in interior transaction areas. I've seen them in behavioral health observational facilities. But essentially, this still allows for through-wall transactions if the event that there's a security threat. And I love showing this image because this is my local CVS pharmacy, and it was broken into this past winter. And those were the security doors they decided to put on the front of the building, even though people were trying to go around back and break in through the drive-through window, because think about the ongoing opioid crisis. People know that these buildings and some of these areas they can break into just to grab pharmaceutical drugs. Believe it or not, people break into veterinarian offices all the time just to grab pharmaceutical drugs because they know the low security threats, or sorry, they know there's no security at those buildings, and the threat of them being captured or detained of any sort is very, very low. So they look at these low targeted areas, and like I said earlier, they're becoming very tactical and cerebral about how they're entering these occupied spaces. So as we roll through the rest of these different types of images and project gallery and case studies, just by looking at all of these images, no one's going to be able to tell me if they're security rated or not, even just looking at this school right here, because I can tell you those doors and the storefront on the entry vestibule, those are all ballistic rated, level 3 standards enforced entry rated. But the rest of the curtain wall and storefront going the other direction around the building was also rated as well, because if those assailants, gunmen, or crazy individuals are trying to break through the doors and they're not going to be able to get through there, well, the next place, look at that hallway that they can easily enter into that occupied secure space if they were just to break the windows on the first floor of that. So in some cases, some buildings may only design with security up to 15 to 20 feet, because if you're going to break into that building, you're going to have to bring a ladder to the job. And if you're walking up that building and you're on a maintenance or a construction worker and you've got a ladder in the hand, more than likely they're going to shut down the building. They're going to notify the authorities because you look like a suspicious individual. Even entry vestibules where they will make the first and second bank of doors ballistic rated or forced entry rated, because all exterior doors, for fire egress purposes and life safety, in the event that there is a threat on the inside of the buildings, those must be open. But the exterior doors as well could very well be open on the first bank. You can walk in, you can check in at the window all the way over there on the wall, and then they can provide access that allows you to gain access to go inside the building as well, if the school and the administration and the staff do not deem you as a threat. You can have opaque doors to allow people to not see what's going on the inside of the buildings that still offer, again, a secure aspect that you can see, that you can't see in, but at the same time, some of the staff know, hey, we're on the secure side of these ballistic rated doors. People are not going to be able to gain access unless someone on the outside gives them that access. At that point, you've gone through multiple security checkpoints to be able to deem that you are not an actual threat. This is an actual level 5 ballistic rated guard booth. Now, I'm not saying that Facebook and Google are going to go at each other for world domination tomorrow, but every now and then you see some of these tech companies laying off thousands of people. You hear about manufacturers laying off thousands of people. Sometimes one or two out of those 1,000 or so may show back up to the building as a disgruntled worker to pick up materials, or they're just coming back because they're angry because they got laid off or had had a disagreement with their employer or their boss or their employee, they may show back up to these buildings just to inflict terror, damage, or harm. So in some cases, yes, sometimes the guard control booth will be ballistic or forced entry rated as well. But as you were noticing and you were seeing, you have the ability to custom create, custom design, incorporate fenestration systems on the exterior or the interior aspects of these buildings to ensure that you are providing a safe, secure space for all of these different types of occupants. And you even think about religious facilities as well. All the anti-Semitism that we are facing around not just our country, but around the world as well. What are typically attached to places of worship or religious facilities? Daycare centers or educational facilities. And in some cases, yes, some Jewish, some Palestinian, some other types of religions may incorporate blast-rated materials on the exterior skins of their buildings because they are truly worried about those types of threats as well. So as we scroll through the rest, this is again just project gallery and case study, but I want you to think about when or where security may be needed. I want you to think like a criminal, so you design with security in mind. I want you to understand and believe and know that there are multiple different types of solutions out there that allow you to custom create and custom design, incorporate security into your buildings as well. And Kayla, at this point, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'm going to roll through the rest of these slides, even though they're just images, but I'd like to open it up to some questions that may be in the chat or if there was a poll taken. Maybe we can get some of their questions answered as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right, let's get started. All right, folks, now's the time for questions. If you have any, feel free to drop them in. I have a few here to get us started. First, we have, is there any one-way view ballistic glass for security control? So one-way view ballistic glass.
Yes, you absolutely can. Again, when people think of like the one-way security glass, they typically think of like interrogation rooms where you can't see through to the other side, but you can absolutely have that incorporated into the inner layers of the glass as well. So yes, the answer is essentially simply yes there. You can certainly incorporate that. That still offer, again, the ballistic and the forced entry protection, but still allows for privacy or people to be able to see out from the insides of the building as well. Great question.
Sweet. Awesome. All right, next we have, are your products suitable for retrofitting existing structures or are they primarily for new construction?
They are for both. The one caveat with retrofit, the main challenge for retrofit is a lot of people think you can put ballistic rated glass into an existing frame. Two reasons you cannot. One, the glass is essentially going to be too thick for the glass pocket on existing storefront that was not security rated. Even if you were able to, at that point, the frames are not rated to stop bullets or bombs or blast or storm impact solutions or forced entry as well, or storm impact threats and forced entry as well. So that's essentially the challenge with retrofit. But yes, you can either utilize our systems if you were to pull out the entire system for retrofit application and new construction. Fantastic question.
Awesome. All right. And next I have, what is the expected lifespan of the bulletproof materials? Do they degrade over time with exposure to the elements?
No, they do not on the glass side. So glass is essentially, again, one of the most durable exterior envelope products out there in the world. That's why we build our skyscrapers out of it. That's why we utilize it for daylighting, vision, clear lines of sight, but for security as well. So even if you were to get a ballistic or blast rated insulated unit with multiple different layers of solar control in there, you will still get the same life cycle you would get out of a standard IGU as well. On acrylic and polycarbonate, though, that's the one that I tell everybody, please do not utilize that for exterior applications because at some point, acrylic, all it is, it's a plastic. It will melt in high temperature situations, so you can't use it for fire safety as well. But over time, and actually in some cases within a year, polycarbonate solutions will delaminate. They will. They will yellow, they will crack, they will craze if you utilize them for exterior applications. I see it happen on ticket windows all the time just because someone wanted a cheap solution for a ticket or transaction window. Please, please utilize glass if you truly want a longer life cycle project to go the entire duration of the life cycle of the building. So great question from a sustainability standpoint. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. That was a good answer. Next up, I have, What is the lead time for ordering custom bulletproof solutions?
It really comes down to the glass makeup, essentially. So solutions for ballistic rated material can range anywhere between, for like a quick serve, 3 to 5 days for standard products, up to 6 to 8 weeks on custom solutions. For US bulletproofing, again, that ranges between the types of glass, the finish, whether you want a painted material, but that can range anywhere between 8 to up to 16 weeks if you decide to go painted finishes, custom finishes, and certain types of glass makeup. But essentially, they're within that controlled range, not getting out there to the 6 to 12 month lead time like some of the other specialty materials as well. So still very much in a reasonable range and time frame.
Hmm. Well, yeah, that's really good to know. Let's see here. Okay, and next we have, do your products meet LEED or other sustainability standards? Are there any recyclable components?
There are to an extent. There are to an extent because a lot of the glass that gets recycled from large manufacturers or large scale factory plants like a Pilkington or a Guardian of any sort. Yes, there is recyclable content. There is lead material that can be provided because at that point they're utilizing those sheets to laminate the glass together. And then even on some of the material for the aluminum metallic members, some of the shavings or some of the milling that could have been lost in the manufacturing process can be collected and sent back to the fabricator of the metallic members as well for us to be able to incorporate and smelt back down to utilize in that material. Now, to keep out the impurities, that is a whole nother process of the metallic members and all the glass recycling, but there's a lot of science and technology that is coming back in and being incorporated into the glass industry and the metal industry as well.
Good to know. Awesome. All right. And last question I have so far. Do you offer a warranty? And what does it cover specifically?
Yes, warranties are offered on all products. And one thing that I always want to point out about warranties are a sheet of paper. That's all they are. They help someone sleep a little bit easier at night, but that's why it all, again, starts with your specifications and your requirements and your performance specifications as well. So please do not necessarily always just rely on the warranties because I'm sitting here holding a sheet of paper in my hand and could be considered a warranty as well. So yes, the warranties range anywhere between 1 to 10 years, depending on which material are. Most aluminum finishes will have a 10-year life cycle on the finish of the warranty as well and the performance. Some of the glass fabricators will have a 5 year to 10-year warranty, depending on the makeup as well. And then you will have a 1 to 2 year warranty. And you can also get extended warranties on some of the products, even on the quick serve side as well. So again, it all just depends on the application, the threats, and the life cycle of building as well. But great question.
Great. Thank you. All right. I think that's all of the questions I have for now. So any final points to make or comments or anything, Wade?
Yeah, absolutely. One, again, I want to thank everybody for their attendance today and interest in the actual specialty fenestration group, US Bulletproofing and Quick Serve, and just security fenestrations entirely. And I will say, I know we're all going to go to sleep tonight and go wake up tomorrow, go, wait, what do we talk about? My contact information is right there. I highly encourage you guys to take a look at us on Acelab as well. Thank you all very, very much for attending today and Acelab for hosting us. But I highly encourage you to go download some material. UL752 standard chart. Feel free to save my contact information there. Reach out to me at any point. We have local representation in every state across North America. And so feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you on designing your projects. And I hope in some cases, never have to use our products. There are those types of threats on your buildings, but you never know when or where security truly will be needed. But I certainly do appreciate everybody in attendance today. Thank you guys very, very much.
Yes. Thank you, Wade, and thank you, Brian. I hope everyone has a great day. We appreciate it.
Have a
Bye-bye.
great day.